10-move Memoless, as its name suggests, is a clock-solving method that doesn't require any memorization. Unlike the normal flip method, this method utilizes simultaneous moves. While it is nowhere as fast as the 7-simul method, it is a good backup method when you somehow fail to memorize the clock during inspection like this dumbass.
Go.
I've experienced with quite a few different pen orders, but here's the best one I found. It doesn't require you to make two things at once, i.e. matching A to B and matching C to D. However, I did find a pen order that is slightly more optimized, but this pen order makes it slightly harder for you to see where you're solving on one of the moves, and the last move is a D move, so I don't think it's as good. I'll still show it at the end of the video if you want to try it out. The first step is to solve the 2x2 on the top left, and there are quite a few ways to do it. You can first use the UR pin to match U to L, and then use the DR pin to match both center and UL to these two, using a simultaneous move. Or you could use the UR pin to match both U and UL to L. And then use DR to match the center to the rest. After solving this 2x2 block, you need to extend this to a cross. You can do this by first matching this to this with the UL pin, and then use the U pin to match everything to this. Or you could match this block to this with the UL pin, and then use the left pins to match these with this. Another way is to use the top two pins and match this to this, and then use the top left pin to match this to these two. After solving the cross plus this corner, you don't have to align everything to 12 o'clock, and then you just do an x2 flip. It's important to note that you must do an x2 flip and not a y2 flip. There might be a way to work with a y2 that I don't know of, but x2 is the only rotation that works for this specific pin order. Once you have flipped to the other side, you want to solve the top 2x2 block again, and it's the exact same as on the other face. I'm not going to re-explain everything, but here's how I would do it. After finishing this block, you want to use the top two pins to match this to this, and I got pretty lucky and these are already matching. If they do not match, you want to turn the top dial until these two match. Then you want to make a 2x2 block on the bottom right by putting this pin down and using this dial to move this and match these two, and use this dial to match this to these two as well. Afterwards, you want to have these three pins up and match UR to DL. And lastly, if you know B-pole 7-simul, this will be very familiar to you. You want to put this pin down so that the top left and bottom right pins are up, and then just solve everything to 12 o'clock. And now I'm going to go through how you skip moves when certain things are matching. When the center matches an edge, you put it on the top, and then you can solve the 2x2 using one move. When two adjacent edges are matching, you place this on the top left, and then you can also make the 2x2 in one move. The same logic applies when you want to skip on the backside. You just place this in the position you want and then do an x2 flip. And after you solve the first side, you will have a skip. I will do a walkthrough solve to demonstrate everything I just explained. The first thing I'm going to do is look for skips. So there are no skips on this side, and this matches this on this side, and that is a skip. I will begin my solve by putting all the pins down except for the top right pin, since my first move will be on this pin. And I'm going to match this to this and these two to this. Afterwards, since this is really close to that, I'm going to match the 2x2 block to this, and then use the U pins to match this whole thing to this. And then I'm going to do an x2 flip. Afterwards, I'm going to match this to this using the top right pin, and then make the 2x2 block. And then match this to this using these two pins, and then use the top left pin to match this to this and this to this, and then use these pins to match this to this, and lastly solve everything to 12 o'clock. Here's the quote-unquote optimized pin order that I was talking about earlier on. The first phase is the exact same, so I'm just going to skip that. And the second phase, you first match this to this and this to this using the top right pin. And then you want to use the top two pins to match this to this. And then what you want to do is use the top left pin to make this bottom right block. And then put these two pins up to match this to this. And then match this to 12 o'clock and also this to 12 o'clock. And lastly, use the bottom right pin to solve the clock. As I mentioned earlier, this method is nowhere as good as 7-simul, so if you want to get really serious about clock solving, this method might not be good for you. However, this is still a great method if you just want a decent average, or if you want a safety when you forget your memo or fail your memo during inspection. With moderate TPS and a bit of practice, you can easily average around 7 seconds using this method. I've put some solves in the background using this method just to give you a demonstration of what less than a week of practice using this method looks like. Since there's no memorization, all of the simultaneous moves will be completely intuitive. Not only is it harder to DNF, it is much easier to do actual simul moves instead of doing one move at a time.